Fighting corruption is one of the three cardinal programs or goals of the President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration. The government has vigorously and actually fired on all cylinders with a view to mitigating corruption in the system and to bring culprits to book. But there have been delays in the court processes of bringing suspected perpetrators of sharp practices to justice. During the opening of the 2017-2018 legal year, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onnoghen, noted that there has been inexplicable or seemingly intractable delays in corruption and financial crime cases, and therefore called on heads of courts to designate one court solely for the purpose of hearing and speeding up corruption cases. Now, do we need special courts for corruption? As the president muted a few days ago, that the federal government is seriously considering having a special courts to try corruption cases. Do we need special courts? And what are the other bottlenecks that need to be removed for us to have quick dispensation of corruption cases? I am Segun Ojelade, and we shall be focusing on this issue on the program today. I'm being joined in the studio by a Port Harcourt-based legal practitioner, Mr. Festus Obuche. I welcome you to the program.
Yes, thanks, Shego, for inviting me.
It's good to have you in our Abuja studios.
Yes, it's a pleasure. I just popped into town some couple of days ago, and it's a good thing that I'm here.
Yes, it is a good thing, because this topic is one that we have almost thoroughly discussed on all our platforms, for which you also been
participated.
Yes, participated. But today, the issue is special courts to try corruption cases. Like I asked earlier, is it needed at this material time?
Yes, I think the time is now, because it's been the cry of many. I think some of us advocated for it some couple of years ago, going by the level of corruption and the dimension the monster is taking in our polity, particularly this era when it has become the norm, so to speak. It has come to that stage, as a matter of fact, and I give kudos to the government for such initiative, though I've not seen anything down on paper or on ground to show that the initiative had started, because it had to start with the bill to the National Assembly, and they've not done that. But then, yes, there is ample need for special courts for corruption cases, not just corruption cases alone, but I think there's need for diversification of the court system, the judicial system, because if you go, a lot of these courts are saddled with so many cases, responsibilities. I stay in Port Harcourt, for instance, I practice there, and you come to court in the morning and look at the court list, and you see about 43 cases before one single judge, lumped together. And of course, the law has become highly specialized in this era, has cyber crime law, technology law, this biotechnology law, and what have you. And there are special persons that are trained for that purposes regarding the law, to the extent of the application of law in those areas. And such diversification will help these people to apply their knowledge and expertise in the dispensation of cases, in administration of justice, within those special areas.
Okay, so what we are saying now is that there are other bottlenecks that delay administration of cases generally, with special emphasis on corruption cases now. But some of these, just like you have said, may not necessarily be the absence of specialization. May just be what we are trying to create now is just numbers. Is that exactly what we need? Just numbers?
It's not numbers per se. Like I told you, the cases are voluminous in the hands of judges that preside over these days. And of course, there's also delay, but you cannot attribute the delay to the courts. The courts, they have their own way of doing things.
That's exactly where I'm going.
The judges still use longhand in writing,
yes.
and the procedure is a little cumbersome and slow. And sometimes lawyers try to play pranks to have adjournments.
That's exactly where I'm going.
Well, the CJN has made emphasize on that point a couple of times. And also you discover that the prosecution comes with very weak evidence and the court cannot convict on nothing. You cannot place something on nothing and expect it to stand. Prosecution will do a shoddy job and expect the judge to fill in the gaps. The judge does not have a duty to provide evidence. For instance, a whole lot of issues come to cause these delays. In most cases, corruption cases involve high-profile personalities who have their way around the bend in getting things done, manipulating the process in the way they desire. And so many of it. And apart from that, also, the fight against corruption, in spite of the fact that it had been strengthened in more recent times, has not genuinely convinced anybody, as far as I'm concerned. It's my personal opinion that we are really serious about it.
Okay. Now, let's thrash the issue of courts.
Yes,
now,
okay.
As a legal practitioner, you must have heard that many people say that the major problem are the counsels, the defense counsels, lawyers defending those suspected of corrupt practices. They bring all sorts of injunctions, ask for all sorts of adjournments, just to put wedge in the way of dispensation of justice. What will you say to this?
Well, these injunctions, motions, and all that, they are provided by the law. It depends on the circumstance, and the judge has ample discretion to allow or disallow adjournment or delays in cases before him. It depends on the circumstance of the case. For instance, if you are representing a high-profile individual, for instance, who may not want the matter to go on, a lawyer could use his dexterity, even though it is unethical, to cause some delays here and there. And we see that happening in Nigeria. The former CJN had amply stated that, to that effect, that, well, the lawyers are not helping matters, as a matter of fact. But there's an extent to which the lawyer can do that before he gets caught up. But again, you look at it from the point of view of the prosecution. What are they bringing? The quality of the prosecution in terms of their prosecutorial abilities and capacity. And you find yourself in a court where the prosecutor is misapplying legal principles or going up the wrong way. The lawyer on the other side for the defense will take advantage of it and they mean to catch in on it. And in most of these corruption cases, we've seen that the prosecution, they seldom do their investigations very well before they bring the matters to court. At the end of the day, the court will dismiss the case and somebody will say the courts are responsible for corruption in this country. I don't think it is fair to attribute it to the courts. The lawyers, okay, because they have a duty to defend their client, but their duty is subject to a whole lot of principles. It's subject because your duty is also to courts, it's to public, it's to the public, members of the public. Your role as a lawyer is to present the case brought to you by your client before the court in a manner that's allowed by law, in conformity with the principles of justice, and at the end of the presentation, it is left for the court to determine. But when a lawyer goes into doing everything, either to shield his client from prosecution or to delay, to cause unnecessary delay, then of course it goes on the side of unprofessionalism.
Some lawyers have done it and have gotten away with it. Don't we have requisite laws or even the bar administration? What are they doing to ensure that lawyers keep to the...
We have the Legal Practitioners Act, we have the rules of professional conduct, and a whole lot of... we have the tradition of the bar, the tradition of lawyers all over the world, which is well recognized of what their job should be in the defense of their clients. And if you go beyond the bounds of decency, of course, you could be roped in. That is why it is very important that in this exercise, the Nigerian Bar Association should be effectively and effectually involved. When lawyers get into that kind of draft practice, it is for the Nigerian Bar Association, the professional body that's concerned with their discipline. And
the CJN, the Chief Justice of the Federation,
yes,
said, directed High Court, state judges, state High Court judges, to designate special courts, that is in the states, to tackle corruption cases. To what extent has this, or will this work?
Well, it will work, but designating special courts alone may not be very effective if at the end of the day the special courts are not saddled with the necessary requisite materials to dispense justice in the manner that is expected. And of course, if the idea is to cause speed, remember that you cannot sacrifice thoroughness on the altar of speed. Sometimes it is better that you have the matter delayed in court than to have an innocent man languish in jail. And that is also very important. In trying to fight corruption, we should be very wary of the fact that there's a way you invoke speed. At the end of the day, people who are not supposed to be in jail will end up there. That is also very important. But there are new procedures that have also been put in place by the CJs. For instance, the Chief Judge of Rivers State, there's had a practice direction.
Okay.
Giving priority to corruption cases. They are of utmost priority, and the courts are expected to dispense with them. I think within the National Judicial Council itself, there are directives to judges that, well, a corruption matter must not exceed so period of time.
Yes.
The period of adjudication, so to speak. And some of these checks can be very necessary. They will be very important. But then again, the issue is the diversification of the courts, which I think is very necessary. A time was when people canvassed for even the setting up of constitutional courts.
Yes.
To reduce the burden of these courts from, allow the ordinary courts to go in the real cases. Some of these special cases should be there. But you come to court to see governorship election petitions, pre-election petitions, and one corruption matter from ICPC, EFCC is all through there. People who are enforcing their fundamental rights are in the same court and all that. And it is just one judge that is handling it. It makes the whole thing look, that's the word, chaotic, as far as I'm concerned. So there should be diversification of the courts. And for proper effectiveness, it's not just creating the courts, special courts, to what extent are those courts independent in terms of finance, in terms of appointment, in terms of promotion, in terms of discipline. Because the present structure of the courts as we have under the Constitution makes them amenable to interference by political elites. Apparently, that is why you have less of convictions of high-profile accused persons in corruption matters. Because at the end of the day, it is the governor that's, well, in conjunction with the NJC, that appoints the CJ, the judges.
Yes. The
president has his hand in who becomes the judge. Even if the Constitutional Court, if the corruption courts are created currently, it is the president that will appoint the judges. The president's men could, at the end of the day, be arraigned before those judges, and things will begin to go. A lot of water will begin to pass under the bridge. So, total and complete independence and autonomy for the judges is a precursor to the proper administration of justice and efficient, effective prosecution and adjudication in corruption matters in this country.
Okay. Now, we'll pause for a while.
All right.
When we come back, we begin to look at the color of the proposed, at least in your own opinion, the color or the texture of the special courts that is being advocated. Now, we went on the street to ask Nigerians whether they support the idea of having special courts to try corruption cases. We'll take a short break, we'll take their view, and the discussion will continue in the studio.
The case that's going to be treated in a short time will take a longer time to try because other cases are being mixed up, But if there is a special court for corruption cases, I think it will help. It will help the system. And also, you should know that a lot of these corrupt people take advantage But the fact that there's delay in the system, clog in the wheel, they will also take advantage to hide and to drag the case.
We need an urgent solution. We need an urgent remedy to solve this kind of problem, to create a body that will prosecute corrupt government officials. And they should not give them room, to prolong the case so that they can find a way to fight back. They should quickly get a commission that can execute, that can prosecute them on time, and there is no more favor.
It is welcome. But as for me, we are talking about that the government must have to discipline themselves first in such a way that if you are my friend and I am in position to punish you, I'll punish you to the core when you have crossed or when you have gone against the law.
To some may like it, but I personally feel there are a lot of institutions already. It's a question of strengthening the institutions that are there through legislation to make sure that corruption cases are given expatriate attention. And the National Judicial Council should be able to monitor the issue of dispensation of justice through the rank and file of the judicial system. The structure is already there. It's a question of legislating on how far these cases of corruption cases should be handled.
We get the judges that are very competent. Out of them, we know those that we can be able to have behind our minds, that these people can be able to take us to greater heights. Such people are the people we are going to bring together. And by the time we bring them, take for example, the late Fahimi, who died. He is a man who fight for the masses, who fight for the people who enjoy the less privileged ones. He will use his money to fight for a cause of somebody who is not justly justified.
Wow, quite informed opinions of Nigerians there on the issue in discourse, creating special courts to try corruption cases. Now, welcome back to the discourse. Let's look at this issue now. The kind of scenario you painted, the situation in the courts as it is today. If we create another court, yes, this one is going to be saddled with just corruption cases. But again, there will be a humongous number of cases. The way our court system is structured now, the judge still writes with longhand, is not automated in any way, the courtroom, the way it looks. Are we not coming back to the same scenario? Maybe what we just have now will just be a huge number of corruption cases before just one judge who is also will begin to go through what they are going through now. Now, what kind of structure? Number one, what kind of structure of the courts are you looking at? And then the training for the judicial officers, including the judges that will man these special courts that is being proposed.
Yes, you have stated it all. It is not just going to create special courts that will solve the problem. If we still have the scenario that is existent in the courts today, it will just boil down to the same thing. The scenario of having a judicial system that is prone to interference by the political elites, and that is prone to influence and manipulation, to boil down to the same thing. You see, you have a judicial system where the materials necessary for speedy adjudication of cases are lacking, or where the judges are not allowed some shade of independence and autonomy in terms, like I said earlier, in terms of their appointment, in terms of their remuneration, in terms of their promotion, in terms of their discipline. Then of course it will still boil down to the same thing. There's been talk all over the place that the corruption, the fight against corruption has been one-sided. I don't want to say it is correct, but then justice must not just only be done, but must be seen to be done at all times. The crux of the matter, firstly, is not just equipping the courts or giving special training to the judges. The average judge who can sit, for instance, in a high court will be competent to handle any corruption case. though there are very special cases. Cyber crime has come in now.
Yes.
A lot of international crime,
Yes,
international
and the one that has to
terrorism.
do with the banks
And what have you, Yahoo.
Yes.
And that requires some shade of expertise. The lawyer who is well thoroughly grasped with his knowledge of common law principles, LLB, BL, gets called to the bar, practices for 10 years, becomes a judge, may not be able to handle such very intricate matters. That's a matter of fact. But the first port of call is to give total and complete independence to the judicial system, like I said, insulate it from external influence. Okay. Somebody talked about strengthening the institutions. Yes. That's the only way you can strengthen the judiciary. Yes. For some time, I say it with every degree of confidence that the judicial system has not helped matters. We are instituted by the Constitution, for instance, to checkmate the excesses of the executive and the legislature. To what extent has this been done?
Let me help in that area.
Yes.
And I know a number of Nigerians will support me in that. I think the support, the confidence of the public there in the judicial system is also on the decline because of the situations that we have, we find ourselves in Nigeria. The courts too, the judicial system is now insulated from corruption.
Exactly.
That
is exactly the point, and that is just for the reason that the political class determines who will go to the bench. At the end of the day, the governor is the one that recommends to the NGC. The president is the one that recommends to the NGC. Sometimes they bring in people who do not have any shade of experience apart from the fact that they have LLB and a BL from the Nigerian Law School and are called to the bar post 10 years and they get appointed to the bench. And such people get there, they do not know any shade of anything. At the end of the day, justice will suffer. What is justice after all? Dispensation of justice. Adjudication is just for the judge to, within the swinging pendulum of adjudication, locate where the justice is. But it's not as simple as that. Because sieving evidence, for instance, evaluating evidence, especially in a case that involves, for instance, international crime, yes, money laundering, it can be very difficult. And it requires a lot of patience.
Yes. And
if the judge spends some months there and you say it's his delaying, then you're not being fair to him.
Yes. Now, let's look at now we're going to have special courts to tackle corruption cases. What kind of court do you have in mind? We are going to have them, as Mr. President has said. If we are to have them, what are those things that you expect to be in place so that the whole idea of having them is not defeated on the long run?
I have stated it. Independence and autonomy for the judicial system, not just for those special courts, for the judicature in its entirety, strengthening of the system, more discipline for the bar, and better investigatorial work by the anti-corruption agencies, the AFCC, the ICPC, and not just to get somebody and have one little scanty evidence and bring to court and expect the courts to perform miracle. No. Complete and total insulation from political interference. It entails amending the Constitution, and it is an imperative.
I was thinking you also mentioned the situation with your learned colleagues too.
I stated that there must be some shade of partnership with the bar, the Nigerian Bar Association. There are checks within their rule of engagement to ensure that you don't take advantage of maybe the courts or take advantage of the prosecution to begin to cause unnecessary delay for your client. But then there are circumstances that such delays will pander to justice. If you have raised, for instance, as counsel, the issue of jurisdiction, and it fails and you want to challenge it in the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court has said you can bring a motion for stay, and it is one of the special circumstances upon which a stay can be granted. In that circumstance, some of these principles will have to be relaxed by the Supreme Court.
Okay, now if we are to have these courts, how many do we need? Do we need one in all the states of the Federation, or do we need more?
How can one do when even all the courts, for instance, River State, sitting on corruption matters, they cannot even dispense with it at the appropriate time, because the level of corruption in this country is very, very high. It's reached to high heavens, and almost everybody is involved. So nobody can say he's an angel in the midst of sadists and Frankenstein monsters. But then, it's a battle that we must fight, and we must take it very, very frontally. And it requires that we must strengthen the judicial system to rise up to that challenge. In doing that, the creation of special courts will be very, very okay. But in creating those special courts within the ambit of the existing court without proper reforms,
okay,
will bear no fruits.
Okay, I must thank you. First for all that you've said.
Thank you.
On this program. We wish you the very best in all that you do.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, until we come your way tomorrow with yet another edition of this program, Nigeria Today. I am Shegun Ojelade saying good night. Bye bye. Thank you.